Welcome to Federation CJA's 360 podcast, the pulse of Montreal's Jewish community.
This is episode 47, recorded on July 22nd, 2025. I'm Glenn J. Nashin.
And I'm Paula Samuel.
Paula, in this episode, a farewell to Israel's Montreal envoy. Yair Zlak will be in conversation with outgoing Israel consul-general Paul Hirschson, and Twin City Recovery with Aryeh Levy on Beersheva's road to recovery.
And our podcast reporter, Jordan Stupler, will be in with an interesting conversation with a hostage debriefer psychologist.
And one more thing from Yair.
And it all begins after this.
Paula, this has been one incredible summer so far.
Yeah, and it's barely just begun.
Well,
we did not expect to spend, we were, in Israel on a volunteer trip and planning on being there for 8-9 days. We didn't expect to spend 2 weeks there, half of which was being evacuated.
Well, fortunately, we had some reports from you while you were away. Dan Laxer sat in on your seat and helped us out while you were gone.
Thank you, Dan.
So what else?
Well, I mean, the time that we were there to volunteer, we got in 3 days of volunteering before everything started happening. And one of the most touching places that we went to and really sort of awe-inspiring was wonderful farm. It's actually a collection of several farms called Rimon Farms, and it's in the Bnei Shimon region and Beersheva, which obviously we know well, Federation CJA and Montreal. It's the sister area, and we've been connected to them for 30 years, and I put together this report. On a scorching summer day in southern Israel, we arrived at Rimon Farm to volunteer, ready to pull weeds from the vineyards and connect with Haaretz, hands deep in its sun-baked soil. Here because of our special connection to the region.
The reason that you're here is because we have a partnership between Beersheva, the Regional Council of Bnei Shimon and Montreal for more than 30 years.
We've been here for a little bit more than an hour now, working on these vineyards, taking out the weeds in between the plants. Super important work and work that can't be done with a machine, so they need manpower, and that's why we're here. These vineyards that you see behind me were created in part thanks to Federation CJA partnership, and the people that you see behind me, it's our staff who are here to work and some members of our incredible Jewish community. It is 35 degrees here, but we are loving every minute. We've got music playing, we've got lots of water, and we have another few hours to go. So this is part of what we're doing on our volunteer trip.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic to be in Israel and fantastic to help and to support Rimon Farm and community as much as we could.
Working at a site that is a project that we've done in partnership with Beersheva and the Bnei Shimon area, and we feel so lucky to be here and to be contributing in our own small way.
The 17th birthday.
The therapeutic agricultural farm is a unique creation of Nir Amitai, a member of an elite unit who, after his friend died in his arms in a terrorist attack, saw the need to create a center for people experiencing PTSD. The farm focuses on at-risk teenagers, helping them enhance their sense of self-worth and self-esteem by connecting with nature.
Like violent background.
Amitai recounted one of his most challenging cases. A 17-year-old boy brought to the farm by police who came to Amitai admitting they no longer knew how to help this teenager deal with his anger. Slowly, the teen was introduced to Rimon Farm's programs, working the fields, tending the soil, and spending time in the open landscape. Alongside workshops and therapy, he began to grow beyond his trauma. And after just 6 months, the young man who had arrived angry and lost, escorted by police, walked back into his life with a renewed sense of self, ready to reintegrate into society.
He's now in Golani Brigade. After 6 months here.
So you don't get a better chance to help build Israel, right? Hands-on, in the earth.
Federation CJA has partnered with Rimon Farm since its beginnings in 2021, standing alongside them in their mission to build resilience and provide trauma relief in the Beersheva and Bnei Shimon regions.
So there's a lot of...
Deeply believing and supporting their ability to heal through their living sanctuary. Investing hundreds of thousands of dollars, and as importantly, investing our hearts.
Working the land, literally. Feels great.
A farm that started as a simple piece of land now not only grows food, it grows hope. For Federation CJA, I'm Paula Samuel in the Negev.
Paula, thank you for that report. So that's part of our new Federation CJ Frontline report that you're putting together. We've got a YouTube channel for that. It could be found under the Federation CJ YouTube channel.
Frontline, Federation Frontline.
And all
those are my stories. Yeah, all the reports that I do are there. And this Rimon Farm, if you want to check it out, haven't had a chance to, and all the other reports that I've been doing over the past few months live there.
Okay, great.
Federation Frontline.
So lots of content for our viewers and watchers. Thank you for that report. Look out for new reports coming from Paola as well. And at this point, let's hand it over to our main guests and our interviewer, over to Yair Zlak and to Consul-General Paul Hirschson.
Thank you, Glenn, for that introduction. It's a little bit bittersweet to be sitting with you, Paul. Paul Hirschson, who I've gotten to know over the past 4 years, the Consul-General for Israel in Montreal, and I guess it's called Eastern Canada. Is that the Atlantic?
Atlantic.
Perfect, the Atlantic. I remember the first time we met was during COVID.
In this building.
And if you think about the last 4 years, there's been absolutely nothing typical about being a consul general here or anywhere in the world. You came in during COVID.
Tail end
of COVID. You had to deal with that, where everything was closed, and we went right into October 7th.
You know, it was a remarkable thing, actually, because my very first week here, I was 2 or 3 days here. I decided to walk around my neighborhood just to discover it. And I walked into a dry cleaners, and I figured I'd just chat with them, both to discover what's going on and to practice my French. So I asked the woman, like, how much does a suit cost and how much does it cost to wash a jacket or trousers, whatever it was. And she answered me. We were speaking French, and I couldn't understand anything. And I hadn't spoken French for 3 years since I had left Senegal, and I walked out quite disturbed. And then I realized that what was happening was, I never knew this, but for 3 years in Senegal, apparently I never looked at people in the eyes. I looked at their mouths, and she was wearing a mask.
So you couldn't tell what she was saying?
I couldn't read her lips, and it wasn't the accent. It was the absence of the lips behind the masks. That's when it was here. Everybody was still in masks, and it was the recovery. The first months, 4, 5, 6 months, there was really no momentum here, and then suddenly Montreal came back on board and woke up, and then October 7, the second half. So the first one was the recovery from COVID, and the second half was the experience of October 7. Nothing normal.
Yeah. And I remember actually because if I'm not mistaken, you had come from Miami in your one of your previous engagements as a foreign diplomat, and we were talking about how Montreal, before COVID, was a place where every night you'd be busy, and you came here and you had no nights that you were busy.
No.
You couldn't shake hands. There was nothing to do.
I spoke to my 5 predecessors, and all of them said to me, my immediate predecessor, David Levy, he warned me. He said to me, COVID. But my 5 predecessors, all of them said to me, they literally sort of pointed their finger at me and warned me. And they said to me, Paul, you've got to understand, it's Montreal. It's 3 events a night. And all of them said that to me, going back to Mark Attali. And it wasn't 3 a night. It wasn't 3 a week. Literally a week after I landed was your son's bar mitzvah.
Yes, which I came
to, and I met about 200 or 300 people who were all at the first event they had been to in 2 years.
It was very, very interesting time.
Yes.
His bar mitzvah was like the opening of the Jewish community.
Yeah, that was actually remarkable because from that bar mitzvah, I met dozens of people, from which I met hundreds of people afterwards.
Which is so much the Jewish community in Montreal. I mean, my personal experience is I moved here in 2002 knowing nobody. And it's such a welcoming community.
Remarkable. I say that having quite jealously guarded the honor and status of my childhood Jewish community of Johannesburg.
Which, by the way, my mother's as well.
There's something in the water here. I don't. This is a remarkable community. To this day, really, it's changed over the decades. Obviously, I only experience what it is today. Something really special, really, really special.
So, from your perspective, I mean, you've traveled the world as a diplomat. You've been to many places, and you've seen Jewish communities. What characterizes the Montreal Jewish community to you that is different? Because I travel for Jewish work as well in a different way. And I often say, there's nowhere like this. It is almost as if this is the last island where everything is different than everything else happening in North America. And I just came back from France, and while there are definite similarities in the Jewish community between France and Montreal, still you look at, for example, just intermarriage rates in France, which are upwards of 60%, which, by the way, I didn't know.
Okay.
And that comes from the Jewish community telling me that in terms of statistic. And in Montreal, we're just up of 20%. And it's crazy.
So, first I'll just say that, obviously a lot of my work is not with the Jewish community.
Yes, of course.
But, what I think Montreal is quite a remarkable place. So for a second, without the Jewish community, but it reflects maybe a little bit on the Jewish community. They say, before I came out here, one of the things which all my predecessors taught me, they said to me that Montreal is the most European city in North America.
Yes.
And they also said to me that were Montreal in Europe, it would be the most North American city in Europe. In other words, it's got all the beauty and culture and sophistication, call it what you will, of Europe, but it also functions properly, like
a North American city.
And I think that sort of little bit of both, it touches the Jewish community as well. So the Montreal Jewish community, in its sort of the religious observance spectrum, is very similar to Jewish communities outside of North America, whereby the bulk of the community is Orthodox, including the seculars. So they'll go to an Orthodox
They drive
synagogue,
on Shabbat to synagogue, to an Orthodox synagogue.
And a relatively smaller component being whether it's Reform or Conservative or Reconstructionist and others, which is the opposite of North America. And yet it's a North American community in terms of, at least until the last 2 years, has been confident and has been welcomed and has been embraced by wider society and has helped build this place. Whereas the history, whether it's in Europe or in the Arab world, the Jews were always on the run. I mean, so it's got that sort of combined, that double take as well. I've worked in the United States. I worked in England. I grew up in South Africa. I worked a little bit with French Jewry. I've seen Jewish communities around the world. There's nobody or no community which has the level of engagement with Israel that Montreal Jewry has got. It just doesn't exist. Not to say that Miami or Johannesburg or San Diego or whoever are not engaged with Israel, because they are, but here it's just on a different level. And I will say also, it may be more the older generation. I'm not sure how it'll play out into the future, but the Jewish education is remarkable. I've been to Friday night dinners, many, inside the Jewish community here in Montreal. And the conversation and the Jewish knowledge is among secular people. I mean, many of them are not secular, but it's remarkable. I haven't seen that anywhere else.
It's very unique, and we pride ourselves in having so many kids in Jewish school, Jewish camps. I think if we refer back to a study that was done in 2018 called the Environics study, I think something like 79% of Montreal Jews have been to Israel, which is just a huge number in terms of a percentage. In 2017, we took 1,000 Montreal. 1% of the Jewish community came to Montreal on one mission, right? The connection to Israel is remarkable in this community, and it's something that obviously I deeply adore and love about working here. And over the past 2 years, we've also seen the Quebec government act very differently than I would say the rest of Canada vis-a-vis Israel.
Very much.
And you've had a big part in advocating for Israel in Quebec, of course, in Canada as well with the ambassador. But talk to me about the relationship with the Quebec government currently, because at the end of the day, when you look around almost all of North America before Trump, the Quebec government was probably one of the best governments in North America vis-a-vis Israel.
Not only since October 7, very much so since October
Right.
7.
Good way of phrasing it, by the way.
But when I arrived here, so prior to coming out here, when I was preparing and doing my planning, I came across the idea of Quebec opening a bureau.
Something we've been advocating for years and years.
It wasn't my idea. The idea was born beforehand, and it was even mentioned by the previous premier of Quebec on his visit to Israel. But I discovered that there hadn't been any follow-up for a variety of reasons, probably partially COVID. And when I got here, it was an idea which some people thought was a good idea, but it wasn't going anywhere. And that's really where the primary focus was my first 2 years. But I will say this: it wouldn't have happened had Montreal Jewry not spent decades nurturing ties with Quebec. It goes back so far that in the 1960s, people don't know this, in the 1960s and the 1970s, non-Jewish Francophone Quebecers were always amongst the top 3 most significant volunteers on kibbutzim in Israel.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
In 1973, after the Yom Kippur War, Quebec was number 1 volunteers on kibbutzim in Israel.
Non-Jewish?
Non-Jewish.
Wow.
Okay.
What a statistic.
There are a group of, today in their mid-late 70s, non-Jewish Francophones who speak Hebrew. Okay? I've met some of them who had such a good time in Israel volunteering that some of them went back a second time.
Wow.
I met one who had been 3 times, and his second and third visit, he went for a year each time. So these people came back Israel ambassadors.
Right.
And there's been ups and downs, but when I got here, I discovered a government of Quebec which were not planning on opening a bureau in Israel, but were absolutely willing to have that conversation. And it played out, and they opened the bureau here. They were so impressed with Israel. The former Minister of Economy, Fitzgibbon, went on a working visit to Israel. Just to jump forward a little bit, he came back. He asked the government of Quebec to convene a conversation about all of their bureaus around the world. And they redefined, based on his visit to Israel, they redefined the priorities. Culture remains important, and language remains important, and immigration remains important. But they redefined all of their priorities for all of the bureaus around the world, putting economic relations number 1 because of his visit to Israel.
Wow.
And then they made the decision to open a bureau in Israel instead of somewhere else. His visit to Israel was the first ministerial level visit overseas anywhere in the world by the Quebec government after COVID.
Tells you quite a bit, by the way.
Yes. And not only that, but at our my first Yom Ha'atzmaut event here in Montreal, the deputy minister of the Quebec Ministry of International Relations came and made a speech at the event. I spoke first, and she spoke second, and I said that this was the first ministerial level visit by the current government to Israel. And then she came on and she said, I just want you to know, it wasn't only the first to Israel, it was the first anywhere after COVID, and it was deliberate. Those were her words. So they really have been open. December 2023, they publicly rejected Canada's support at the United Nations for a premature ceasefire following, it was 10 weeks after October 7. Israel had barely done anything. And they've stood very firm very firm. And I'm sure you saw just a couple of weeks ago when Premier Legault gave the Order of Quebec to Norman Steinberg, a remarkable speech.
Remarkable.
Where he says, you know, I want to take the opportunity to speak to you about your community. And he just embraced the community. See, I'm a diplomat, but I haven't always been accused of being diplomatic, so I'll say it anyway. Had the municipal leadership and had the national leadership spoken the way he spoke, and he didn't say...
Different world.
It would have been a different world. There would have been demonstrations and there would have been protests and everything would have been fine, but there would have been a red line differentiating between freedom of speech and hate speech. Mm-hmm. Freedom of speech is fine. It's fine. And you know, you've been to Israel 100 times. The conversation in Israel
Israelis exercise that every day.
There's a difference between free speech and hate speech. Spitting at people, not to mention some of the words that people say, it's been astounding, some of what's been allowed. That hasn't been from the Quebec government. That's been from the municipal and the national, with Quebec being an island of comfort in between.
And I'm going to say one more thing, because since October 7th, Quebec hasn't closed its Israel office.
Correct.
And actually, I believe has hired more staff for the Israel office.
They've just grown to 3 people.
There we go.
There were 1. There was... So Martine Biron, the Minister of International Relations, was scheduled to land in Israel on October 9th.
Wow.
She was flying October 8th, 2023, to open the office. They had to postpone it. They postponed her visit. They opened the office in February instead of October. It was a tough time.
Yeah.
One guy went out from here. He's still there, doing a marvelous job. In particular in AI, in the medical sector, and in cybersecurity. He's got a big investment there, and there's a lot of things happening already. They've just employed 2 people. One is an economic person, and the other one is, let's call it, public diplomacy. And they're really happy with what's going on there. There's huge potential.
Amazing. It's just amazing. You know, you mentioned Premier Legault's speech when he awarded Norm Steinberg the Order of Quebec. Firstly, I encourage everyone to watch that speech.
Absolutely.
But he said something which just struck me about the history of the Jewish community here and how entrenched it is in Quebec society. Whether we really see it or not, it's really part of Quebec society for 300 years, 200 and something years. It's a very deep connection that we have. As someone who's traveled through many different communities, you know, when I think about European communities rebuilding themselves, right, in Jewish communities, they don't have that history. It's a little bit different. The history kind of, there's a point where there was a big departure, right? And especially in Western Europe, where, of course, after the Shoah, people had to come back. And here it seems to have been, you know, a very long history that we have here, which has really helped us in Quebec society develop those relationships. Those, like you mentioned, we're part of the culture here, and we need to continue being part of the culture.
I don't know if Montreal Jewry realizes, you know it intellectually, but I don't know whether it's been absorbed sort of into the DNA, how much Montreal Jewry built the city, not on their own, together with others, obviously. A little anecdote, if I can, half off the topic. March this year, get a phone call from our ambassador, the Israeli ambassador in Morocco. Says to me, you've got something called the Jewish in Montreal?
Meaning the hospital.
Meaning the hospital. I said to him, yeah, what can we do? So he tells me a story. There's a really serious, senior, important guy in Morocco. Called him up. He's got 2 sons, Moroccans, not Jews, in Montreal. One of whom had a problem with his heart. The other brother, they're in their early 20s. The other brother calls an ambulance. They get in the ambulance and off they go. And the brother hears, I don't know if it's the medic and the driver or 2 of the people in the ambulance speaking. The one says to the other, the Jewish is full, we'll go to the general. And off they go. And they're not particularly happy with the treatment that they get. He's been discharged, they're back home. And the one with the heart problem is asleep and his pulse rate is 30, which is
very low,
not particularly good. And tells his father, the healthy one, tells his father in Morocco, including this thing about the driver and the medic saying the Jewish is full, will go to the general. He doesn't phone the Moroccan consul-general in Montreal. He doesn't phone the Moroccan ambassador in Ottawa.
Canada.
And it's a guy who could have, and they would have jumped to attention and done whatever they could do. No, he phones the Israeli ambassador, and he says to him, "Can you help me watch the Jewish? Can you?" So
it just shows.
It just shows.
Wow.
I have to say, to the credit of the Jewish, I sent a text message to Dr. Lawrence Rosenberg, and I said to him, "I need a favor. Can you please help me?" I think it was less than 90 seconds later he phoned me. I explained the story. Basically, they took him in, they looked after him, they gave him treatment for a month. I didn't stop getting text messages from the brother. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You're wonderful, thank you. And our ambassador in Morocco didn't stop getting messages from the father. So this is what the Jewish community has done. You've built an infrastructure in this city. Everybody knows the Jewish today is not only for the Jews. It's
world class.
It's world class, and its footprint covers 50% of the population of Quebec. And you're opening doors for Israel in other countries through what you've done.
Fascinating. Never thought that would be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And by the way, in an Arab country, which is almost counterintuitive to the world we're living in, because our streets, of course, and the location of the consulate has become a trigger point, of course, for demonstrations. How have you been able to deal with that and your perspective?
So,
and of course, impacting Jewish residents around there as well.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I will say that their drummer that they employ is pretty good. So much so that I have rearranged the furniture in my apartment so that I can put a chair and have coffee in a better location where I can open the window and listen to the drumming. And they're pretty good. You know, it's an interesting thing because I'm an expat myself. I'm an immigrant myself. I grew up in Johannesburg. I moved to Israel. And I've learned that immigrants tend to romanticize the home country. I mean, if it was so wonderful, why did we leave? Okay? And if you look at the Arab world today, there are three major components to the Arab world. There are the Islamists, who I'm not all that excited about, as you can imagine. There are, let's say, the others. I tend to call them the Emiratis because I lived in the Emirates for 3 years. They're Muslims. They're conservatives. They're not exactly Democrats, but they are interested in education and they're interested in technology. They want to be in the 21st century. They're interested in a bit of bling as well and cash. And they're very interested in a relationship with Israel. And the third component are the Arabs living outside of the Arab world. And they are the least informed of what's going on in the Arab world. They left, in many cases their parents left, with a certain understanding of Israel that's frozen in time. And they are going to be the last ones to realize that the Arab world today, in its arm wrestle with itself between the Islamists and let's call them the nationalists.
The streets and the intellectuals, because that's what's happening.
The Arab world that wants to move into the 21st century wants partnership with Israel. 7 countries in the Arab world already have, and there are going to be another 7 in the coming years. And the last people to catch up
will be the ones in North America.
Will be those in North America who stuck in their parents' worldview and don't really understand. But having said that, September last year, something fascinating happened when Israel went finally. We had no choice. We went into Lebanon after going after Hezbollah. We saw a small but a noticeable reduction in participation in the anti-Israel events. What happened? For 11 months, the Lebanese in Montreal had been protesting together with the Algerians, together with the Moroccans and whoever else against Israel. And then when Israel went into Lebanon in September last year, they started getting phone calls or having conversations with their cousins in Lebanon, 70% of whom said to them, we're backing Israel, don't tell anybody. And they got embarrassed and they stopped coming to the anti-Israel demonstrations. Not all of them.
Yeah, of course.
But they were like their family, the Christians, the Druze, talking of what's going on in Syria, the Sunni, the Alawite, all sorts of people. The Alawites more in Syria, but there are a small group in Lebanon, with the exception of not even all of the Shia, although the majority of the Shia, the rest of Lebanon was not backing Hezbollah. They were not necessarily saying it publicly, but in conversations with their cousins in Montreal, they were. We have a real challenge. It's not only the Arab world, it's also the progressive crowd. Education and educating about Israel. When I say we, I think it's a partnership, as it has been for decades, between Diaspora Jury or Montreal Jury and Israel, both of us. I think both of us dropped the ball a little bit.
Agreed.
Amongst ourselves and amongst the non-Jews around us. It's remarkable how much positive engagement there is between Israel and the Arab world. I mean, it's difficult to say that at the height of this war.
But even at the height of this war, it's happening.
Let's not forget that this war was started by them in order to prevent a growth of the peace momentum, to prevent an agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. But we really have that. We have a lot of work to do, reaching out to Arab communities. I mean, I'll give you a small example. It's not mainstream. There is a organization of Druze of Montreal. I had no contact with them. It's a huge mistake.
Right.
Why wasn't I in touch with them the last few years? They're here. They're organized. They exist in Ottawa, in Toronto, in Montreal. There are so few of them, if any, are from Israel, but they're still
Druze. And we're protecting them.
And that's a failure of ours not to have been in touch with them.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I think for a second about the demonstrations on the streets and all the noise that's been going on, and that there's a certain amount of clarity that comes out of it in terms of what we need to do as a Jewish world, as Israel. A lot of things, for example, one of the things that we notice, we don't know how to talk about Israel today. Not to our Jewish kids, not to our parents. We've invested heavily in developing an entire new curriculum written about Israel today. How do you relate to the word colonialism when it comes to Israel? And how are you supposed to talk about it? And how do you talk about 4,000 years of history that belongs to you?
In Canadian terminology, where it's such a significant conversation in Canada, why have we not been saying to ourselves and to others for a decade already, we are the indigenous people?
Right. Which in this country, more than anywhere,
it
is
resonates.
a trigger word. Yeah, absolutely.
It absolutely resonates. Yeah. And it's true.
Yeah, very true.
There's a lot of work to do there, conversation with ourselves and with others. The problem with education is it's so long term that the fruits of your work are only seen a decade down the road, 2 decades down the road. And so what we really want to do is we want to do the hardware. We want to build a building. You can have a ribbon cutting ceremony.
Much easier.
Much easier. We need more investment in software than hardware. We need to go more for the people. We saw the across North America, American, Canadian Jewry has built university campuses
all across North America,
but haven't sponsored the faculty. They haven't created a chair of this and a chair that the Qataris did. Okay,
very strategically.
We built the infrastructure, and they financed the software, the faculty. We got it wrong.
Yeah.
We built remarkable relations with Quebec. Again, had Montreal Jewry not nurtured ties with Quebec over the decades, I can say that I did this wonderful project with the Bureau, okay, but it wouldn't have happened because they were willing to have that conversation. But we didn't do the work with the municipality, knowing that the SPVM doesn't report to the provincial government, it reports to the municipal government, and then look at the trouble we've had.
Right. It's interesting. I'm reading a book called The Black Swan. If you haven't read it, it's a very interesting.
It's a fantastic book.
And by the way, by a Christian Lebanese.
Follow-up.
Yes.
By Nassim Taleb.
Yes.
The follow-up book to that is called Anti-Fragile.
I haven't gotten there yet.
Okay. So Anti-Fragile is a fascinating book. He's quite arrogant. By the time you get to Anti-Fragile, you'll see his writing style it hides the quality of the ideas. The ideas are fantastic.
The ideas are
fantastic. He asks a question in the follow-up to Black Swan, and he says, what is the opposite of fragile? And he researches this in many languages, and everybody comes up with the words strong or resilient, and similar words. And he says, no, the opposite to fragile is not strong or resilient. If you take a glass and you put pressure on it, it cracks, it breaks. The opposite is not that it stays the same. The opposite is that it flourishes. He says the word doesn't exist in any language. But that, and he writes an entire book about the concept where he defines it as anti-fragile, something that flourishes under pressure. And that, it was the Jewish community of Montreal, created the Jewish because you weren't allowed to be doctors or have doctors or work in hospitals. And the state of Israel, no diamond, no pressure, no diamond.
Right. Fascinating.
The pearl, no pressure, no pearl. And that's, we have flourished under pressure.
Yeah.
But the corollary, unfortunately, has been the truth. When there hasn't been pressure, we became lazy and we didn't invest. I never met the Druze community.
And we didn't expect the Black Swan.
Correct.
Which is October 7th for us, which is now something that we have to calculate. In the last couple of minutes that we have, Paul, and just on a personal level, I remember the first plate of sushi that we shared. And I promised you that Montreal food, kosher food or not, but kosher food specifically here is better than most places that you'll eat in the world, which is interesting because it brings so many different parts of the world to Montreal. You're now leaving Montreal mid-August, and what's next for you?
First of all, Tel Aviv Beach and a cup of coffee.
Nothing better, by the way.
Yeah. So I go back to Israel. I'm going to be in Israel, I think, at least 2 years. I have to decide whether or not I want to go on another posting overseas. I like the work. I love the work overseas. This is my 4th foreign ministry posting. They've all been very different. I've learned lots. I've enjoyed lots. And I like to believe I've done some constructive work along the way. But I may not go on another posting overseas because I've still got my children and I've got my mother who's aging. And generally, Israel's been through a big
change.
Few years. And I need to l'hitraot shuv, to reconnect. So the first question is a yes or no. Do I want to go on a posting overseas or not? If yes, it'll be summer 2027. And then I'll have a relatively short time in Israel. I'll be back at the foreign ministry. I'll find something to do. If no, it's a different question.
Right.
Because I live in Tel Aviv and my office is in Jerusalem, and I have to decide, do I want to do that commute for 5 years? That commute was
that may send you overseas again.
No, but either that or early retirement. That commute was never, ever a problem for me. I even enjoyed it until the first day in Montreal. When I saw the distance between my home and the consulate, it destroyed the commute between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem for me.
Although the train is not bad.
And I'm moving to the train.
Yeah.
I'm moving to the train for the first time. I'm with the foreign ministry. I remain with the foreign ministry. I've done some years in Israel with the foreign ministry as well. I got a few ideas. I'm not sure which I'll be able to sell or which the foreign ministry will be willing to buy. As to what I'm going to do. I spent 4 years as a spokesperson there, and the whole public diplomacy work that we do is pretty critical and important.
More now than ever.
But there are other ideas as well that I've got. So we'll see how that plays out. But whatever happens, I will first of all be waiting to see you in Israel when you come visit.
I will have that cup of coffee on the beach with you.
I arrive in Israel on a Thursday, and on Sunday, I am going to a wedding of 2 Montrealers getting married in Israel.
Amazing.
Okay, so my it's the first event I've got in Israel is a Montreal event. I just had a meeting today with a new business venture that some guy's got who wants to set up something in Israel. So there's a lot of follow-up.
Right.
Short term, I have to figure out, get my container and unpack and find where I'm going to put all my things and reconnect to the internet and TV and get my phone package sorted out. Medium term, back to Jerusalem, back to the foreign ministry. And down the road, I've no idea. But Israel's an exciting place. There's a new opportunity every day. I would be remiss if I didn't say I'm waiting for the entire Jewish community of Montreal to move to Israel, where we've got place for another 20, 30 million people.
Agreed.
What you guys have done in Israel is remarkable, in Beersheba and beyond. I've said this before, and I will take the opportunity now to say this. By the way, to you personally as well, but I'm saying it to the Jewish community in general. We don't always remember to say thank you, but we are always appreciative. So I'll take the opportunity to say thank you to the Montreal Jewish community and to you, because Yair, you've been not only a friend, you've been someone who I've bounced some ideas off, and you've told me, yeah, that all sounds good. And every now and then you say to me, Paul, you're off your rocker, don't go there.
Thank you for allowing me that privilege, by the way.
And it's been really good. This community is a marvelous community. The city is a marvelous city. This province and this country is great. I've got my criticisms. Your winters are a bit hectic. But this community has opened its arms and embraced me, fed me too much food, poured me too much whiskey.
And some wine.
And a little bit of wine. And I discovered actually in the very religious components of this community, tequila has become popular.
Oh, wow, okay.
So you learn little insights into the community. Remarkable. It's been a wonderful journey. I'm not leaving any of my heart here, but I'm going to take a little bit of Montreal in my heart back with me.
Good. And, in Hebrew, we always say Shalom L'hitraot.
Nachon.
This is goodbye, but not goodbye. And firstly, I thank you for your friendship.
Shalom L'hitraot.
Yeah.
Literally translated.
Right. Firstly, to thank you for the friendship and the ability to call you and to WhatsApp you and just questions and being able to bounce things off you. It's been incredible friendship and relationship, and I think it only benefited the community. And I learned a lot by watching you do what you do, because I found it very interesting, because every other mission that I've seen here, I'm going to say, has had a pretty quiet time. There hasn't been much that I could see was happening in terms of the office, right? There were the regular things, the showing up and, advocating for Israel and working with governments. But you came in a time where Israel had to be part of the conversation quite a bit. And it wasn't easy. And watching you balance that, and I remember sitting down and talking about universities and students, and it was an entire different world that we all walked into after October 7th.
Absolutely.
And we all learned how to navigate it, but watching you do it was a great mentorship moment for me. So I thank you for that. And I will be coming for a coffee.
Absolutely.
I'm in Israel. I'm in Israel enough to make sure that we see each other many times.
It's only because of your job, not because of you, that I will say that you can be the last of the 90,000 that comes to Israel, okay?
Well, you know where my heart is, so it's very difficult.
It's been wonderful. It's been remarkable. I could stay here, and I know we're running out of time, or run out of time a long time ago. I've got memories. I'm not going to manage to say goodbye to everybody. There's too many people.
You'll welcome them in Israel, though.
Yes.
It's a simple solution.
Absolutely.
So, Paul, I'm not saying goodbye today, but thank you for
No, but I'm going to see you anyway in Israel.
Look forward to it.
Our podcast reporter, Jordan Stupler, joins us in studio now. Jordan, we both met a fascinating individual about a month ago by the name of Glenn Cohen. He is the chief of hostage debriefing team in Israel. He's a former chief of psychology from New York. His stories were absolutely compelling and riveting. Tell us a bit more about that meeting.
Yeah, Glenn. I mean, Glenn Cohen, leading hostage negotiator, hostage debrief team leader, as you mentioned, he's actually been the first mental health professional that meets with so many of these released hostages as they make their way home to Israel. In addition to that, he's written the protocol for recovering the returned hostages, leads a team of psychologists who are debriefing the hostages. So his hands are fully involved kind of throughout the whole process. And,
can I just ask, so when you say debriefing as they come home, we're talking about the hostages that we're seeing coming out of Gaza, before they do anything, they meet with him?
Yeah, exactly. Even before the images that we all see on a regular basis of them hugging their families, he's kind of the one that kind of, directs them, guides them, and eventually also, meets with them, just talks to them as we'll hear him talk about. I mean, what was also interesting, kind of how he kind of started, he spoke about the morning of October 7th, obviously getting the news that there were individuals kidnapped from Israel, which was kind of a shell shock, trying to understand it. At first, he only got word of 2 people
that were kidnapped.
By October 8th, there were 3,200 missing.
Wow.
So he's trying to kind of uncover the whole situation, the evolving nature, the uncertainty of it all, particularly in those early weeks. So he talked a little bit about that.
Nobody knew what to do. There's no deal. We're suspicious. That's the understatement of the year regarding the Hamas's intentions. And so they sent a top commando unit that David knows well, and they are ready for a firefight because the Red Cross ambulance, they're sure that the Hamas terrorists are going to jump out and trick us. So they're ready for a firefight.
He also shared details of that first hostage release. If you'll remember, some 2 weeks after October 7th, there were 2 Americans, Judith and Natalie Ranan, and even their unwillingness at first to discuss their time in captivity whatsoever.
We just don't have a protocol for this. This is unprecedented. Hundreds of civilians, children, women, elderly, to bring them back and to recover them from captivity. There's no protocol for this, and it's very complicated because the next day I started writing the protocol to achieve 2 goals. One, to give them a very soft landing, treat them with kid gloves like they deserve after captivity. But on the other hand, to get vital, life-saving intelligence about the other hostages left behind. And these are seemingly 2 contradictory goals. It's a different skill set.
What was also super interesting was how every minute detail was thought out, from how the hostages were greeted upon their arrival at the hospital to the stress balls that they were given. Everything was orchestrated to the point where it would make them feel as comfortable as possible amidst these obviously unprecedented situations. And the idea kind of behind it all was, yes, to make them comfortable. And, obviously they're going to be given the time to reunite with their families. But the goal, I guess, of Glenn and his team was to slowly move into the conversation, to share what they know about the hostages that are still in captivity and their personal experience. And this was an opportunity, Glenn talked about, to really have them flip the script from being powerless to now being empowered.
That's super fascinating, because when we see all the images, I don't know about you guys, but every time you see them running towards their families, my thought is always, how are they so put together? How are they so, connected to be able to scream and yell and cry with their families? And this is part of the backstory that we knew nothing about. That's fascinating.
And what we did hear is that Glenn Cohen met with everybody that would have any encounter with these hostages, from the moment they were rescued to their transit back into Israel and to their reception at the medical facilities. Everyone went through a debriefing to understand how to deal with these people, and then the long term afterwards, where obviously mental health support, psychology plays a huge role. He, as a former chief psychologist in a hospital in New York, understood this profoundly and dealt with this, and is now giving lectures worldwide to top executives and CEOs in leadership and psychology. What an amazing training ground this has been for him.
Incredible. Yeah, definitely. And I think these conversations, obviously, we're super obviously critical in bringing updates and information to the families about their loved ones that were still being held by Hamas. And this really meant for many of them finally having some kind of signs of life.
Right.
For many of them, their child, their sister, their brother. Also, you know, always with a positive spin. I guess even when there was, you know, not as great news to relay back to the families.
Right.
For him to be able to offer some kind of positive spin was important for Glenn and his team.
And I would imagine, I mean, some of them are coming home to devastating news that they knew nothing about. So I would imagine that needed to be step by step told to them. Because imagine you come home and you find out, you know, some of your loved ones who you thought are waiting for you have been killed. That's just, I find it fascinating. It's just amazing the work they do.
Yeah, and maybe one final thing that kind of struck me was how he talked about for many of the commandos. At first, they said that many of them said they'd rather commit suicide than ever be held hostage. And so Glenn kind of has tried to challenge these preconceived notions, kind of talking about the stories that he's encountered, obviously, over the last almost 2 years. And so he kind of talked a little bit about that.
In this way, to empower them as returned hostages who have been helpless and no control whatsoever. Now they can actually have an impact and save literally their brothers, sisters, and friends who are left behind. And so that's what we did during these conversations.
And he infused in all the people that he met with the ideals of life and living and gaining an internal power to overcome any of these dark thoughts and the importance of survival. And he said to a great amount of success in all those that he trains and teaches. Really a fascinating talk. Jordan, thanks for that report. That was very interesting.
Thanks so much, Jordan.
Our sister city of Beersheba suffered direct hits from Iranian missiles during strikes last month. 4 people lost their lives and more than 80 others were injured after an Iranian ballistic missile struck an apartment complex in our sister city of Beersheba. The direct hit caused extensive damage and caused part of a building to collapse. It was one of 6 missile attacks directed at Israel from Iran in rapid succession on the early morning of June the 24th, setting off sirens and sending millions of Israelis to nearby bomb shelters. And this attack also came just a few days after the nearby Soroka Medical Center was badly damaged by an Iranian missile.
You know, Glenn, we've been closely coordinating with community leaders and first responders, and we've already moved quickly to authorize an Israeli emergency campaign. But it's devastating. Like the damage is devastating. I was there, as you know, in Israel during all that time. And Montreal has a long history, 30 years, I think, of relationship between the Beersheba, Bnei Shimon regions. And to tell us a little bit more about how things are going there, we have Aryeh Levy live from Beersheba.
And our listeners will remember that Aryeh is our Federation CJ Director General in Israel, and he's located in a car somewhere in Beersheba.
Somewhere in Beersheba, Aryeh. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, the first question, the obvious question is, how are things going in Beersheba? How has it been since the bombings?
Listen, one of the things that we worked on together with our partners here on the ground is to create and to invest in resilience. And we've seen in the last bombing for the Iranian war how this was important, whether it was physical resilience or psychological resilience. So things are back to normal on the one hand. On the other hand, we have, close to 1,000 people who are homeless right now, since, we had 4 different attacks in Beersheba, in our partner city. And it's challenging, while at the same time, we continue with our lives. Right now, as I speak to you, in a few minutes, I'm going to go in and meet 200 students who have volunteered during the war since October 7th and are getting a scholarship from Federation CJA as a thank you. And, this is part of us moving on and moving forward and investing in the young people and making sure that, whether it was Iran or it was Hamas 20 years ago, or it was, whenever it was, we're able to pick up ourselves up and go back to normal.
So before we look forward to what we're going to be doing in Beersheba area, let's look back over the last several weeks. Tell us a little bit about the damage that's been caused, both physically and to people, its impact, and specifically with regard to investments that Montreal's already made over the last many, many decades.
So the story is a tragic one. It's an unprecedented attack. 4 ballistic missiles hit directly in Beersheba. You mentioned it. One of them attacked and was targeting the Soroka Hospital. The Soroka Hospital is the only hospital in the region and in 60% of the land of Israel. It serves close to 1 million people. Part of us thinking of how we get to our routine is also joking, right? We're a people that joke a lot. So I told my kids after the Soroka Hospital was hit in a joke, but not really, please don't get hurt this summer because we have nowhere to go. And it's funny because Soroka Hospital was a big chunk of it was completely destroyed. People were moved away from the hospital. And if we take just the Soroka Hospital as an example, about 8 years ago, there was another round of operations at war with Gaza. And Federation CJ has invested in underground protected operating rooms. And it seemed both by, the fact that we've made the right decisions back then, but a lot of, let's call it chance or whatever we want to call it. The night before the hospital, the management had decided to move all the operations to the underground operations. And the precise missile that hit exactly where they moved the patients out of. So it was a miracle on the one hand, but also thanks to the fact that we've known how to invest and create the capacity for us to help our partners and our family in Beersheba to deal with these situations. Besides that, there were 3 other hits. One of them was tragic, as you mentioned. 4 were dead, and the whole building is completely has to be destroyed. But it's not only the building; it's everything else around it. And I'll just give you one example because we don't necessarily hear about that in the media, right? We talk about the deaths and we talk about the injured, but sometimes it's the little stories. For example, right after this happened, I called up somebody that I know has an ice cream stand, and his business. Sometimes we said, we're going to have people in hotels, we're going to have people displaced. Let's send, for the kids just to have ice cream, and we'll fund it. And when I called him, he started laughing, and I said, "Why are you laughing?" And he said, my business was hit also. I said, "But it doesn't make sense. Your business is 2 kilometers away." And that's the damage, the scale of the damage. It's, a big 2 kilometer around any hit.
Right.
And it's crazy.
Aria, I don't know if you realize this, but I was actually in Israel with a bunch of Federation staff at the time of the attacks, and we had just driven through Beersheba and met with so many of the leaders, and it really, the city is like, one thing is hit. You talk about the 2 kilometers away, but the impact is so huge because it's such a compact place, and it feels like everybody knows each other. And the first thing that we all said as we were being evacuated was that how is the ripple effect impact on you? There's the resilience part, but obviously, like you said with the ice cream, the ice cream stand, everybody's impacted somehow. And so what's the feeling, what the community feeling? How are people reacting and helping each other, and then the struggles as well?
Yeah, so it's a great question because at the end of the day, we're talking about people, and it's those people stories that always hit us the most. So for good and for bad, on the one hand, on the bad side, people having to stay home, not go to work, some businesses being affected, and that was true all across Israel, but especially where in Beersheba where it was hit, and knowing that it could hit again. People started panicking and in trauma, and you saw, a ghost town at some point. On the other hand, you've seen the amazing solidarity of people going up and helping, old people and helping, special needs and going to Soroka and helping as much as we can. The doctors that have retired and nurses who have retired have come back to work just to be able to give a hand and, for free, just to volunteer and to be able to give a hand. So there's always this combined approach of, this mixed feeling of seeing, the bad of it, but also how to see how the community comes out and comes stronger. And with our help, also with the help of the municipality and the government, we were able to put the city back on track.
So, Aria, tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing over these last weeks in response to the tragic occurrences in Beersheba, as I like to call you, our man in Beersheba. What is your work like?
So basically, since October 7th, we're in emergency mode. And, we planned it out. We have a strategic framework, of first response, and then let's put back the community on track. And, the day after, and I thought it was, linear, right? So we start with first response and we end up, trying to build resilience again for the next round. And it turned out that since that specific Iran war, it's not linear, it's cyclical, right? So you always have to look back and see, okay, hold on, what happened now? And respond to what's going on. So as soon as we saw that the Soroka hospital was hit, our first reaction was to say, we need to help here on two levels. Number one, we need to help rebuild. And, we've granted a significant amount of money that, thanks to our very generous donors, to the Soroka hospital in order for them to be able to not only build back the hospital that we had, but to build better, right? To have more operating rooms, and because the government will reimburse the damage, but it's how do we take this, and it's hard to say, but leverage it for something that's even better. So more operating rooms and a better system, and the only hospital that we have. That's one thing. So going back, to the basics. We also support and continue to support a lot of healthy, mental health issues, psychiatric care, whether it's online or whether it's group therapies. Since the beginning of the Iran war and following the October 7th war, obviously, and we're still in it, to make sure that people have what they need in terms of services. So we've helped with that. We are helping the municipality also. The municipality has been incredible. This is the real story about this war, I can say. If I look back since 2006, when we had the Second Lebanon War, where we saw the collapse of the municipal service during that war, here we saw how important that level of government is, and how they've learned from war to war, from operation to operation, to be better and to give better services. So they've responded amazingly well. When they responded, obviously there were gaps in their response and in the training that they needed for the teams and the equipment. So we came out also with a very significant package to help them with that, and also redeploy new services to make sure that if God forbid this happens again, we're there for them. And this has proven for us also being very meaningful, to make sure that we always look. I think our role in philanthropy is not only giving the service once it happened, but also looking forward and trying to predict what can be the needs on the next round. And that's what we've done in the previous rounds, whether it was with Soroka or the municipality, and it's been very successful. And hopefully we won't need it anymore, but we still need to make sure that we're ready.
I find it, what you're saying to us is just so inspiring and amazing. And I will tell you, for someone who was there when the missiles started falling, we had just been, like I said, we had been in Rimon Farms. And one of the things that we constantly said when we were, running from bomb shelter to bomb shelter is that you just start to absorb the resilience of Israelis when you're there. And that comes from all the work that you're talking about, and all the trauma preparation, and all the PTSD post-trauma therapy and stuff. And it's something that is just awe-inspiring. I want to say that we're always impressed, but this when you speak that way and you tell us all the details of that, it really is something that is something that we're so very proud of. So I just wanted to mention that.
And I think the magnitude of what you're speaking about, Aryeh, is for the most part inconceivable to the average Canadian listening or watching this. It really doesn't resonate. It's beyond our comprehension to a great extent. So maybe take us through a little bit about what we're doing and what we can do going forward. You've talked about what some of the priorities were in mental health and other areas in the last years. So where do we go from here?
So first of all, thank you for sharing your experience, and you sure know how to come to Israel, when to come to Israel. That's great. But listen, this is only a small part of what we've been going through in the last 2 years. But I think altogether, in the last 20 years since, the Hamas became a huge issue on our southern border, and Be'er Sheva was directly affected. Listen, this is a story about us waging a war, and I'm not talking about military, I'm not talking about anything. Obviously it's also that, but it's a war against the fact that you don't know when your routine is going to come back, and this has a huge psychological effect. And even when it comes back, I just went to a friend's house not a long time ago, and he told me that his son hasn't left the shelter. He decided to go sleep in the shelter. And since then, up until today, he still sleeps in the shelter, but there's no more sirens and there's no more Iran and there's no more, but still, it still has its effect. And so we need to understand how deep this goes. And while we're a very, very resilient people, there's, a limit to that. So I think if I had to answer your question, Glenn, about, where do we go from here? I think we need to continue to be very innovative in finding new ways and other ways of getting to mental health. And we've done that since October 7th. Yes, we have the traditional ways of, therapy and all of these things, but also doing things online in a system, in Israel that really needed to be able to do something that's online, especially when you can't leave the house. To do things that have, like horseback riding or the Rimon farms or agriculture, or doing things with surfing and the sea, and different ways and different approaches. And I think, again, if I summarize the role of what we can do and how we can help our brothers and sisters in Be'er Sheva from Montreal, is to always support and see how we help support these initiatives that are not, the typical initiatives that need to look forward, have to build better, but also have to look at innovation. How do we make better services, other services accessible to more people? And by doing that, I think we create a plurality of options for the people here who really, really benefit from that. And it's life-changing for many people.
And I think what you're getting at in terms of the Israel Emergency Fund that's been set up since October 7th, and specifically the funds that are being earmarked towards our partners in Be'er Sheva, show the uniqueness of Federation CJ's ability to reach out, to work through you on the ground with people directly where this is necessary. So you're indicating priority areas, and I think what you're indicating is our ability to allow the philanthropy from Montreal and to allow our many donors to feel confident that the impact of those dollars are making immediate and sustained benefit to all those that it's helping, if I'm understanding you.
Right. That's a very good point. And also I'm going to add that it's, thinking about, being on the ground and directly affecting the population is one thing, but also measuring impact and knowing that, and what we do is measured, is, we make sure that every dollar is spent. First of all, it's every dollar because, there's no intermediaries here. And every dollar is spent is well spent. And, and we learn also, I think, there's many organizations that fundraise and the needs are huge and, they're all valuable. But what we do with Federation is something else. We look at a framing where we say, where can we be unique? Where can we help? Where, maybe the government is not there yet. Maybe the population, where does the research, lead us to in creating those unique opportunities for funding and creating those amazing programs that weren't there before we started intervening, and also creating this sustainability, the fact that we bring in the government to help fund moving forward. So we make sure that if we funded $1, first of all, it brings 2 or 3 other dollars, but also more importantly, once our dollar is not there anymore, making sure that this continues and this continues to thrive. So I have a lot of examples. I'll just give one. This psychiatric help that we've been doing online, at some point it's going to be picked up by the HMOs here in Israel that are funded by the government, and that's going to be a regular service being offered. And this all started, by us listening to the people on the ground and listening to the leaders, and not thinking that we know better, but really listening on what we can do and how we can help the best.
Amazing. Aryeh, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for for joining us from your car. We know you have a lot of kids who are waiting to see you, and so we don't want to hold you any longer. But thank you, and thank you for giving us news from our sister city, and send all our love to Beersheba from everyone here in Montreal.
And especially to those couple hundred kids you're about to meet. Tell them how much we appreciate their volunteerism and the work that they're doing on our behalf for all of the residents that they're affecting.
Thanks so much, Aryeh.
Well, thank you so much.
Sign up for Federation CJA urgent community alerts through WhatsApp to receive urgent, accurate information on security issues. Find out how to keep safe through timely messages on breaking developments. If you're on WhatsApp, you can be among the first to find out. Sign up at federationcja.org/urgent alert.
Inscrivez-vous au message d'alerte d'urgence pour la communauté de la Fédération CJA sur WhatsApp pour recevoir de l'information précise sur des enjeux de sécurité nécessitant une intervention immédiate. Apprenez à assurer votre sécurité grâce à des messages pertinents sur les dossiers d'actualité. Si vous êtes sur WhatsApp, vous pourriez être parmi les premiers à être mis au courant. Inscrivez-vous à fédérationcja.org/alerte urgente.
Paula, have you tried some of the dishes served up by Zera Cafe? Amazing dishes. We've got a dedicated shelf in our freezer just for the food coming out of Zera Cafe.
Well, you will be happy with the latest news that Pigeon dans le Parc, which is associated with Zera Cafe, is now open for its second season at Hampstead Park. So you can get all your goodies without having to come here at Federation to pick it up. You can go to Hampstead Park and pick it up because they're open for the summer. And I went to their opening party and put together this report about everything that they've been able to do since last year, how they're growing, and how much the community has adopted them as the favorite cafe of the quartier.
Let's watch your next Federation CJ Frontline report. Here it is.
It was a day for celebration. The Pigeon dans le Parc Cafe, in partnership with Zera Cafe, opened its doors for its second season. Nestled in a corner, this cafe stands out, not just for its delicious food, but for its inclusive team of neurodiverse staff, serving the community with warmth and pride while building their confidence and sense of belonging. It was opened last summer for the first year, and this is the second year. And what's really interesting is that last year they employed 4 to 5 employees. This year, they're employing 9 employees because it was so popular last year. It's nestled in the middle of Hampstead Park. The pool is on one side, tennis courts on the other, playground right in front of me. And people love coming here, but not just for the food, which is spectacular, but because they say the experience is a whole other level because of the employees who serve them. Like employee Jonathan Novak, who's working at the cafe for his second season. Thinking the experience will be like working here.
Well, the experience I like, it changes a lot. It changes my life. It helps me. It helps me to help talk with customers. I even love working with the cash. It's amazing.
And just as Jonathan has become a beloved fixture of the cafe itself has become a cherished part of the community. What began as a pop-up is now deeply rooted in the lives it serves. Federation CJA has been a proud partner of Zera Cafe since 2020, investing more than $100,000 towards its programs.
We expanded. We're proud of the fact that this year we have our employees making salads and sandwiches in the kiosk, so we expanded their skills and what we're training them to do.
And it got to give them more hours and also got to give them a public-facing opportunity to expand their skills. So we're thrilled.
This simple idea that was born from a need and fueled by an opportunity.
Just thought it'd be great to be able to combine our space that's underused with a community organization.
Has now turned into a space that delivers more and means more than anyone expected.
It was more successful than I thought. And I'm not talking about how they do, financially to raise money or anything like that. Just the response from the community, the appreciation. I even myself and my family couldn't believe how excited we were to come to this park.
Their mission is clear, their impact undeniable. For Federation CJA, I'm Paula Samuel at Hampstead Park.
This is a safety reminder from Federation CJA. Your vigilance helps keep our community safe. If you see something, say something. In an emergency, call 911 immediately. When it is safe to do so, report incidents on the Community Security Hotline at 514-343-4343. Or use our online form at federationcja.org, where you can also upload photos or videos related to an incident. Your contribution helps us gather critical information that strengthens our collective safety. Stay aware, stay engaged, stay safe.
Ceci est un rappel de sécurité de la Fédération CJA. Si vous voyez quelque chose, dites-le. En cas d'urgence, composez immédiatement le 911 et signalez tout incident à la police puis au réseau de sécurité communautaire au 514-343-4343 ou visitez fédérationcja.org pour signaler un incident en ligne. Votre vigilance contribue à la sécurité de notre communauté.
Did you know, in Montreal, nearly 8,000 Jewish community members live in poverty? As the cost of living grows, so too does the impact on our community's most vulnerable. An empty fridge on Shabbat, going without medicine or home heating, the stress of not knowing if the money will be there to pay rent this month. No Holocaust survivor, single mother, or struggling family in our community should have to live with this reality. But tackling poverty and vulnerability isn't simple. It requires a strategic menu of services that together can uplift those in need, providing real help that restores hope. Your gift to Federation CJA funds a strategic combination of programs for our community's most vulnerable, including rental assistance, so families aren't forced from their homes, youth programs, so no child falls through the cracks, employment opportunities for neurodivergent individuals, unlocking dignity through independence, and mental health support because suffering in silence is not an option. Your generosity doesn't just provide help, it restores hope. Visit federationcja.org today to make your gift.
And now, one more thing from Yair.
I just had the opportunity to speak with the consul-general of Israel to Quebec and the Maritimes and Atlantic Canada. I'd be remiss if I didn't do one thing, and that is really thank the RCMP for the time that they spent with him. Not easy times to be a consul in Montreal, but definitely not easy times to be the group that protects the consul. They were just incredible. I think it's important to do that shout out to the RCMP at the same time. I just recently returned from Paris, a group of Federation executives called the Large City Executives, which are 22 federations which represent the largest communities and the largest campaigns in North America. We went to France, to Paris, to learn about the Jewish community, understand what's happening there, anti-Semitism, and then we had an opportunity to fly to Israel on a flight that was actually chartered by the Jewish Agency for Israel for a group of Parisians who are making Aliyah to Israel. It was a very, very interesting few days that I spent in Paris, understanding where French Jewry is today. Obviously, a community that's felt anti-Semitism for a very long time at levels that we are only starting to experience, and a community that has struggled with terrorism that has specifically targeted the Jewish community for the past 30 years, and of course, challenged by what that means. I think the most interesting part of the visit was the resilience that French Jewry is really living on a daily basis. You know, the fact that there's 250 kosher restaurants in Paris, or something to the effect of 250 kosher restaurants for a Jewish community of 350,000, and that is more kosher restaurants than New York, Montreal, and Toronto put together. It's quite incredible, and it's a testament to the ingrained culture of Jewry in France, and I think talks a lot to the fact that French Jewry is there to stay and making an effort to stay and live within circumstances which is not easy, but resilient in doing so, teaching their Jewish education. Somewhere around 33% of their kids go to Jewish schools. They're very fluent in Hebrew. They have many synagogues, and they continue to invest in their Jewish community. In fact, I was in Sarcey, which is one of the communities which is almost surrounded by a Muslim community. And they were just proud to show us the new Jewish community center that they just built. 12,000 Jews, and they consider themselves 12,000 strong and continue to be 12,000 strong. We did have an opportunity to meet with a group of French Jews who were making Aliyah. And I will say that they were making Aliyah for various reasons. Not one of them said they're running away from Paris or from France. Many of them were talking about the economic circumstances of France today. Others were talking about the fact that their family members live in Israel, and this has been a journey that they've been on for a while. And we had an opportunity to be on a flight with them. It was interesting because during that flight, we actually had them sign the official documents of them making Aliyah, which was a very emotional point. And I remember back many, many years as a child when we moved to North America from Israel. And I was watching the kids as they were watching their parents sign their documents on this airplane and thinking about the kids and how their lives are about to change forever. Something that I went through at a very young age. And I was thinking about, these kids are about to become the next generation of Israelis who are going to contribute to the country and become part of the fabric of Israeli society. And what an incredible thing that is as well. As we landed in Israel, of course, one of the things that we wanted to understand and see, I've been to Israel a number of times, having witnessed the damage that a Katyusha rocket or a Qassam rocket have when they hit a building and not intercepted by the Iron Dome. We're talking about a whole different world when we're talking about ballistic missiles. We visited Bat Yam, which was, of course, one of the areas which was heavily hit by a ballistic missile which landed in a neighborhood. There are 1,200 displaced citizens because of that one ballistic missile. It's a very sad story in Bat Yam. I don't know if you've read about it, but the family had just moved from Ukraine to Bat Yam. The daughter needed treatment for cancer, and the husband was stuck in Ukraine fighting a war. The family all lost their lives in that hit, ballistic missile, in the building where it hit directly. And the father couldn't even leave Ukraine to come to the funeral because he's conscripted into a war. A very, very sad story. But when you look at the damage, you understand, really, when we talk about ballistic missiles, we're no longer talking about ballistic rockets or whatever we want to call them. We're no longer talking about just physical damage. The enormity of the damage done to property, the trauma that's felt by Israelis having witnessed rockets fall is quite severe. And, as we look at going from October 7th and the trauma that Israel had to go through with October 7th, the trauma that continues with the fact that we still don't have all the hostages free today, and then having another war within the war with Iran, which in itself was probably unexpected, but was that black swan moment for Israel, and then witnessing what that means for Israeli citizens as they calibrate the fact that you're looking at 4,000 homes in Bat Yam that were, in one way or another, impacted by this one ballistic missile, and 1,200 people who were displaced from their homes. So very, very significant damage from what transpired. It's an interesting time now as Israel kind of recalibrate and refocus its energies and what's going to happen in Gaza. And as we hear news of maybe and possibly we're at the brink of a potential deal for the hostages and a ceasefire. I know that many Israelis are praying to see the hostages home. All Israelis want to see the hostages come home quickly. And I know that we in the diaspora look forward to that day as well. At the same time, understanding that the security of Israel is paramount because the future can't see another October 7th. We have to make sure that that doesn't happen. We're on the eve of coming up to Tisha B'Av, which is a moment in our Jewish calendar which we take pause and think about those days where as a Jewish people, we felt trauma, the loss of Beit HaMikdash, which was a center of our Jewish beliefs and for generations. And at the same time, looking and saying, how do we move past the current situation that we're all living through, whether it's anti-Semitism here, whether it's the war in Israel. As a Jewish people, we need to more than ever be united and come together so that we have a brighter and better future, which I know that we will have. Gam ze ya'avor, this too will pass, and we will come to better times. And I think that's really a key message that we need to carry with us as we come out of Tisha B'Av and go back into some normality as we go back to school in September. Campaign season opens, and we try and make sure that our community remains safe, secure, and resilient here in Montreal.
Technical production by Bruno Vargas. Podcast reporters are Jordan Stupler and Dan Laxer.
Contribution by Amanda Sobel, Hillary Cohen on social media, and I'm Paula Samuel.
For the Federation CJA 360 podcast, I'm Glenn J. Nashin.
Thanks for listening. To find out more about the work we do at Federation CJA, the impact we have on the Montreal Jewish community in Israel and around the world, visit us at federationcja.org, on Facebook, and on Instagram. Until next time, Shalom.